What happened in Euthyphro?
They were talking, and Euthyphro was like an idiot.
Well done. Yeah. They were talking, Euthyphro was like an idiot. He was getting very frustrated. And we're going to see that frustration come out again today in the Apology. I, Euthyphro, would not be superior to the majority of men if I did not have accurate knowledge of all such things. From that to, I gotta go. Demonstrating again, we think we know much more than we do. One of the catchphrases of Socrates is, I know one thing. Oh yeah, what's that? I know nothing. And we're going to see that play out today. That's Socrates' claim. I know one thing, and that's that I know nothing. We're going to follow the trajectory here. Euthyphro is where we were. It has a sequel in the Apology in terms of the chain of events that happened. So we're going to look at Apology. Apology is where he's in front of the court, and he's going to answer for his crimes. Crito is what happens afterwards. We know Socrates is going to get executed, and so he's in prison before that. So what happens in Crito is they're like, hey, Socrates, let's bust you out. And he, no. Even though they're doing the wrong thing to me by executing me, that's still better than me trying to break out and not be subject to my polis, my city. And then we'll get to the Phaedo. We left off Euthyphro outside the court. Apology, he's going into the court. And whereas a lot of Socrates' dialogues by Plato are dialogical, multiple interlocutors. We saw it last time. We had two people talking, Euthyphro, Socrates. Here, it's just Socrates. This is a monologue where he's standing in front of court. And let's talk about that word to start. Apology. Apologia. What's an apology?
Like an admission of guilt where you're trying to make up for something.
All right, so yeah, let's go into a couple things. I like that admission. The guilt thing, I think that's the way we usually colloquially mean it. You owe me an apology. Which there's an indictment there when we say that, right? You owe me an apology. You're guilty of something. I'm waiting. Has anyone ever demanded an apology before? It happens a lot. Have you ever deserved an apology? And yeah, that's exactly what you're thinking of. Like, I'm still waiting on it now. Have you ever apologized for something? You remember when you were a kid and you looked straight down at your feet and you're talking to your parents? I'm sorry. Okay. And that we think it's that. All right, so admission, sometimes we think it's, saying sorry. Sometimes, now this is a separate thing, but we wrap it up here too. The petition for forgiveness is sometimes wrapped up into it. I'm sorry, do you forgive me? It's sometimes packaged in here. Now, I say all this because that's how we mean it. But on the other hand, this seems like something different going on. What is an apologist? The word apologia in the Greek there, which we translate or render in English as apology. Can it mean an explanation? And so really when you apologize, the apologizing part of all this is the thing where you say, here's what I did. It literally is the word in Greek for a defense. So this is Socrates' defense. What's he defending? Himself. And he's explaining his position. So also an apologist is someone that defends something. So if you're an apologist for, this comes out sometimes, if you're an apologist for human rights, you're going around defending the notion of human rights. It comes up a lot in the notion of theology. Right, we can talk about a Christian apologist. They're not saying, I'm sorry for Christianity. What that means is they're not apologizing in the sense of saying we're sorry for what our religion has done or whatever it is that we're talking about. But they're explaining and defending it. Usually a Christian apologist will say, here's why Christianity is true. Or a Muslim apologist, here's why Islam is true. So here, Socrates is defending himself. Off the bat, and like I said, this is all him talking. I'm not going to be overly loquacious here. He said, I'm not going to talk too much, I'm just going to get right to the point. Debatable. But he says, Men of Athens, I'm here, I hear I'm being brought up on charges. 17c. From me, you will hear the whole truth, though not by Zeus gentlemen expressed in embroidered words, stylized phrases like theirs, but things spoken at random and expressed in the first words that come to mind. For I put my trust in the justice of what I say. So here I go. Here's my defense. And he says, it's great that I should defend myself. But I shouldn't? Shouldn't I? Against my accuser. So what's he being charged with again? Do you remember? Yeah. He tells us in about 19a. Precisely. Yep, like apparently going up against the religion. So, again, 19a and to B here. Let's take up the case from the beginning. What is the accusation which arose? The slander in which Meletus trusted when he wrote out the charge against me? What do they say when they slandered me? It goes something like this. Socrates is guilty of wrongdoing in that he busies himself studying things in the sky and below the earth. He makes the worse into the stronger argument, and he teaches the same thing to others. You have seen this yourself in the comedy of Aristophanes. There's a play called Clouds by Aristophanes, one of those ancient Greek plays where Socrates is in it, and he's apparently just floating in the clouds, being a complete idiot. That's expressed then in the comedy of the time. He says, okay, people are making fun of me, I got it. And what he says here, not one of them is true. If you've heard from anyone that I undertake to teach people and charge a fee for it, that's not true either. And he says elsewhere here, if I were charging money for this stuff, I would certainly have more stuff, wouldn't I? But I'm dirt poor. I don't have shoes. Socrates was probably a stonemason. He might have carved some actual statues in Athens that maybe even that still exist. But he quit his job right before this to start doing this philosophy stuff. That's what he's going to tell us. All right, Socrates, what's going on? You tell us. Let me hear your defense, your explanation, and we'll figure it out. And he says, anyone who says that seems to be right, and I will show you what has caused this reputation and slander. These people saying these bad things about me. Here's what's happened. Listen then. Perhaps some of you will think I'm jesting. I'm not joking here, though. What I say is true. What has caused my reputation is none other than a certain kind of wisdom. Sophia. It's a certain kind of wisdom. Now, he doesn't say it's wisdom itself, but a certain kind of wisdom. What kind of wisdom? Human wisdom? Maybe. It may be that I really possess this, while those whom I mentioned just now are wise, with a wisdom more than human. I don't know. But this has to do with wisdom. He says this. He had a friend in Athens that people apparently knew, Chaerephon, right there at 21a. Chaerephon. What did Chaerephon do? He went to the god at Delphi, who actually Socrates calls as a witness here. I call to the stand the god at Delphi. Why is Athens called Athens? Who do they worship in Athens? Athena. Okay, bears their name. Now, Delphi is a little less obvious. Who do they worship at Delphi? Apollo, who's the god of wisdom. So apparently Chaerephon went to the oracle at Delphi. This person was an oracle, but they would make oracles as well, claims. And this is what Chaerephon did. He went to the oracle at Delphi and basically asked the question, oracle in the temple, who's the wisest of them all? According to this anecdote at what happened to Chaerephon at Delphi, the oracle said, Socrates is the wisest of them all. And Chaerephon was like, that's interesting. Goes back to Athens, tells Socrates, you won't believe this. I went to the oracle at Delphi, active worship in the Greek religion. Religions, I suppose I should say. The oracle said, you're actually the wisest person around. Now Socrates, stonemason. What? How could I be the wisest person around? Surely, we're in Athens. There's got to be someone else wiser than me. So then he says here, I took upon a quest. I thought the god was testing me, the god being Apollo here. And so my quest became this. I have to surely Apollo is joking with me or wants me to demonstrate that someone else is wiser than I am. So here's my Socratic quest is this. I'm going to go out and prove that I'm not the wisest person out there. I can't be. And this is actually a God-given task. God in the sense of Apollo. But it's a God-given task. Which leads him to responding to one of those charges. How come I going against the old gods if it's one of the gods that gave me this charge, that gave me this responsibility? I can't really be blaspheming the old gods if I'm literally doing what they told me to do. Chaerephon, the guy that could corroborate this story, he's dead. Yeah, so he can't really corroborate it now. But his brother heard that story from him. You can go out and find him and you can listen to him here if you really wanted to. And then what I did was this. I wanted to go prove that someone else was wiser. So he says this. He goes in this order. He goes to different groups of people. He starts by going to the politicians. That's a mistake. So he says this here. And this is at 21b. Consider that I tell you this because I would inform you about the origin of the slander. When I heard this reply, okay, Apollo says that you're the wisest one of all. What? What does the god mean? What's his riddle? I'm very conscious that I'm not wise at all. What then does he mean by saying that I'm the wisest? It's God, or a god at least. So I can't really say, no, you're wrong, you're lying. So what's going on here? It's not legitimate for him to deceive me. So for a long time, I was at a loss to his meaning. Then I very reluctantly turned to some such investigation as this. I went to someone reputed as wise. All right, let me go find the wise person. Hey, wise person. This person's got to be wiser than I am. Then, when I examined this man, there is no need for me to tell you his name. He's one of our public men. That means he's a politician. Here's what Socrates did. Literally, I got to go find someone wise. Let me converse with them and see what they want, what they know. And the first person he goes to is a politician. This is step one. The particular accuser here, he mentions him by name. Not here is Lycon. But I don't know if Lycon was the politician that ended up being part of the conversation or the politician that ratted on Socrates to the Athenian authorities, one of the two. But he says this. So I went to him. And my experience was something like this. I thought he appeared wise to many people, and especially to himself. But he was not. Have you ever seen someone that thinks they know a lot about what they're talking about, and they obviously do not? So then what does Socrates take his quest to be? We kind of saw this with Euthyphro as well. Oh, here's an expert. It's not an expert. What happens when you try and show someone that they're wrong? Mm-hmm. Anybody familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect? It's where people who are well-informed, it's two things, two principles, and then I want to talk about the corollary. One, people who are well-informed about subjects expect everybody else to be well-informed about those same subjects. So I'm a philosopher, so I'm like, or we're talking about Socrates and Plato. Sometimes everybody knows who Plato is, right? That's just kind of like, it's my rolling assumption. Or if you're really into a hobby even, how do people not know about this? Okay, you don't know the difference between, it could be sports, it could be video, what have you. Okay, whatever it is, you assume that everybody at least knows a little bit about it. Another feature of Dunning-Kruger effect is this. People who don't know much about anything assume that they know a lot more about everything than they do. But then a corollary of that is that when people who don't know much about anything get told that they're wrong and you show evidence to them, they actually become calcified in their positions. That is to say, rarely does someone go, when they're not, and this is the people that are not well informed, rarely does someone go, oh, I didn't know that. Let me change my perspective now that I've learned something new. People actually dig in to their mistaken positions even when provided with evidence. That's what they do. And this is just a feature of human behavior. I'm not saying that prescriptively that's what we should do or we shouldn't do. Frankly, I think we shouldn't. But descriptively, it's what we actually do. We see that here. So the politician goes, what? When Socrates does this, so I then tried to show him that he thought himself wise, but that he was not. Listen to this line. As a result, he came to dislike me. And so did many of the bystanders. So I withdrew and thought to myself, I'm wiser than this man. It's likely that neither of us knows anything worthwhile, but he thinks he knows something when he does not. Whereas then, when I do not know, neither do I think I know, so I'm likely to be wiser than him to at least a small extent. So he says, maybe I'm a little bit wiser just in this. I don't say that I know stuff when I don't. He does. He claims to be an expert, but he's really not. Apparently about the politics. We don't know exactly what the conversation was. We can extrapolate, I think, from other things. He says, after this, I approached another man, who I thought to be wiser than he. And I thought the same thing. And so I came to be disliked both by him and many others, by all the politicians in town. Maybe politicians were the wrong people to go to. Let me find some other wise people. Who else were considered to be wise? I got it. Part 2. The poets. The main accuser here would be, and these names you don't really need to know, I'm just putting it out there. Miletus, who he already mentioned by name. Now, poets, I want you to envision this. Who in our society today, we have a lot of celebrities who are associated with music and the writing of lyrics. And they hold a lot of sway, too, yes? And they make a lot of money. We've got musical artists are also almost kind of like brands, and they're like institutions. That's kind of the way it was in ancient Greece as well. So he goes to them. Let me go to the musical artists of my day. The poets. So that's what I mean by poets here. Yeah, they're writing like lyrical poetry, but they had that kind of esteem. It goes to them. Poets! You're really good with words. You're really good with you're really good. Sometimes your lyrics are profound. How do you do it? Has anyone ever had that experience before? You ever read a poem? Listened to a song? And here we mean especially lyrical music, like music with lyrics. You hear lyrics and you're like, wow. It makes me feel something. That's beautiful. We're just impressed by the rhythm and the way in which something's presented. So he says, after this, I proceeded systematically. I realized to my sorrow and alarm that I was getting unpopular. But I thought that I must attach the greatest importance to the god's oracle. Apollo told me to do this, so I got to keep doing this no matter how unpopular I get. So I'm going to go to the musicians. I found that those who had the highest reputation, typically, in their field, were nearly the most deficient. And those who were thought to be inferior, sometimes more knowledgeable. So popularity did not seem to correspond with ability. I must give you an account of my journeyings. So I went to the poets, the writers of tragedies and dithyrambs, and the others, intending, in their case, to catch myself being more ignorant than they. Surely, they know more than I do. I don't have a PhD in poetry. Surely they'd be wiser. No. So I took up those poems which they seem to have taken the most trouble. So I went to all the popular works, analyzed the lyrics, and asked them about what they meant. So here you wrote this. This is amazing. What does it mean? In order that I might at the same time learn something from them, I am ashamed to tell you the truth, gentlemen, but I must. Almost all the bystanders might have explained the poems better than their authors could. So it seems like the people enjoying the poetry get it better than the actual artists do. These people are not as impressive as you think they are. There's a presentation there. They're not that smart. We give them a lot of esteem, but probably the average person that's a fan gets it better than they do. But the poets seem to have a similar experience. At the same time, I saw that because of their poetry, they thought themselves very wise in other respects, which they were not. Listen to Socrates. These people not only do they not know what they're talking about, even though they think they do, they go beyond that and start talking about other things with expertise as well, or with supposed expertise as well. Same thing happens here. We don't like you, leave us alone. Third group, the craftsmen, the artisans, people who make stuff. Now, I don't mean people that do this as a hobby. Engineers to some degree, the masons, the people who build stuff, where it takes a kind of expertise. The Greek word there is techne, that expertise, where we get technology, that's where we get the word technology. Technology, literally, words about expertise, it's techne and logos. Artisans, craftsmen, people that build stuff, it goes to them. Antaeus is the figure here. Same thing, and I'll summarize here at this point. Same thing, goes to them, hey, you know a lot about this stuff. Explain it to me. And the people, again, same phenomenon. People who are the experts thought themselves wise. Now, it's not that they didn't, now, let me be clear here. Thought themselves wise. It's not that they didn't have knowledge. These people know about government. They know something about it. These people know something about the composition of poetry. Although Plato says here it's more of a knack. You're just good at it. It doesn't really involve some sort of systematic process. And here, these people, they have knowledge of stuff, how to build things together, but they're unreflective about it. Well, and so what these three groups of people did was they went to the Athenian authorities and said, make this man stop it.
So who actually liked Socrates? Like, who didn't think that Socrates was dumb?
The young people in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they were like, you're kind of cool, old dude.
Yeah. The young people were into it. So the young people, and that's one of the charges too. He's corrupting the youth.
Oh, right.
Spoiling our children. And what are the kids doing now? Asking questions.
But do they have, I guess, I wouldn't expect their legal system to make any sense, but do they have any guidelines in place for what the kids should be educating, or is it just what they thought was?
There were some laws on the books. In fact, Athens especially is known for its legal traditions, and it's like Pericles, for example, being a Greek hero, not a hero in the sense of Hercules, like an actual person that existed, who was also involved in the legislative process. So they have laws in the books. I don't know exactly what they were. Some of them are accessible. Even Plato wrote a book later on laws, or what the laws of Athens should be. They don't adopt. But apparently there's at least this idea, and this should be familiar to us. Even if it's not on the books, I think we've seen this kind of attitude as well. What should the young people be doing? What should they be learning? We see this kind of fight about education sometimes. What should the young people be learning about? Our values. I don't want people I hear this complaint about public schools all the time. They're teaching your kid, they're teaching your kids secular values. I'm complaining about, did you know they're learning this in school? They're learning this. I find that offensive. And so often, the place for the children, we want our values to be inculcated into them, not some other values. Unless we be offended with them, you're going to do it too, with your own kids. You're not doing what they do. Young people, end up being into this. They're not offended. They're like, yeah, ask those questions. Look at them unable to answer the questions. Usually, the older you get, and that's not true with everybody, but generally speaking, it's the older one. They go, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, but keep it this way. That's a tendency. On the other hand, there's there's almost an effervescence to youth, where we're like, no, let's do this. Let's break some eggs. Let's offend some people. And that's the way the younger people were taking what Socrates is doing. He's going to ask them, they're like, look at this guy, he can't answer the questions. He's, sorry, Socrates, it's time for me to go. Now we've got our crew, people saying, Socrates, we need to kill him, please. Well, actually, we haven't got that far. We're just, right now, at this point, they're just complaining. We'd like, Socrates, we'd like to speak to your manager, please. And your manager happens to be the Athenian assembly. As a result of this investigation, this is 22E, 23A. As a result of this investigation, men of Athens, I acquired much unpopularity of a kind that is hard to deal with, and it's a heavy burden. But you know what? These people are slandering me because in each case the bystanders thought that I possessed the wisdom that I proved that my interlocutor did not have. People listened to me talk and they were impressed with me. I'm not giving myself props here. They were. That's my defense. I didn't blaspheme. I didn't invent new gods. Literally, one of the old gods, Apollo, maybe you've heard of him, put me on a quest to find this stuff out. And all I did was ask people, tell me more about politics. And they would give me answers that were unsatisfactory, like what we saw in Euthyphro. Apparently it was conversations like that. Define it. What is politics? What is poetry? And it's one of those things where, yeah, it's difficult to define, but it's not just that it's difficult to define. Some of the questions that I ask, none of you are necessarily experts on something that I ask a question about, necessarily. But the apparent experts couldn't answer about the areas of their own expertise. Politician, what is politics? It's any kind of questions they were receiving, they just gave unsatisfactory answers. And that's all I did, was show that your answers are unsatisfactory. People overheard it, and that's really what's made you mad. The fact that you claimed that you know more than you did, and then when the ruse was demonstrated, when it was shown that you don't know what you think you do, then you got upset about it. All right, now, again, you ever had that experience where you realized that you were mistaken about something? Okay, now look, he's in front of the people of Athens, the assembly. You're the jurors here. You got a job. Don't believe what they say. But I've given you my apology, my defense, my explanation. Here's why I did what I did. I turn it over to you now. The jury now gives the verdict of guilty. So, after listening to all the stuff, what do we got? Guilty. All right, Socrates, you're guilty. And then this guy, Miletus, poet, the lead poet, goes, also, I'd like to request the death penalty, please. Really, it says in the text, the jury now gives the verdict of guilty, and Miletus asks for the penalty of death. You think Socrates is going to be upset?
Was he giving his defense to the politicians that he already ticked off?
Well, I guess the assembly members, which includes, these are basically the landowners in town, some of whom we would classify as politicians, the ones who are coming up with ideas, but these are the people in charge. So yes, some of them surely are. Somehow Socrates is going to offend them more. So right now the death penalty is up in the air. They're like, okay, he's asking for the death penalty. Do you want to tell us why we shouldn't kill you? Socrates, oh, indeed I would. I would love to tell you. In fact, not only that, I've got a better idea. You ready? I hope you're ready. First of all, he says, I'm not mad. I get it. He's frustrated. I'm not being angry with you for convicting me. I don't think I'm guilty of these charges. But you know what? I'm not mad. And listen, I also don't think you should be a coward either. Now then he changes modes here. He says, I don't think you should be a coward. By saying this, I did not think that the danger I ran should make me do anything mean, nor to regret the nature of my defense. I would much rather die after this kind of defense than live after making some sort of, bloviating speech about nonsense. Neither I nor any other man should, on trial or in war, contrive to avoid death at any cost. So you should never go about, he's saying here, you should never go about doing something being afraid that, what if I could die? I don't care. He's like, really, I don't care. You could kill me for this? I don't care. Because if you worried about that, if that was your one worry, I'll do this thing if it doesn't kill me, I don't want to, if you're worried about all the you're going to be a coward. Indeed, it's often obvious in battle that no one can escape death by throwing away one's weapons and turning to supplicate one's pursuers. And there are many ways to avoid death. In every kind of danger, if one will venture to do or say anything to avoid it. You can always get out of death. Vengeance will come upon you immediately after my death. A vengeance much harder to bear than that which you took in killing me. You did this in the belief that you would avoid giving an account of your life, but I maintain that quite the opposite will happen. So he's saying here also, you do this is going to stain you forever. It's wrong to kill me. Like, I'm not afraid of it, but it's wrong for you to do it. And also, people are going to remember my name. Are they going to remember yours? He's not saying that in a bold sense. It can come across that way, but here we are talking about Socrates right now. Can we name anyone on the assembly at the time? Have you heard of at least the name Socrates before? Even if you didn't know anything about him before this class? You know anything about the Athenian assembly? That's his point. Yeah, I'll go even further than that. Death is a blessing. Death is awesome. And here's why. For oneself. Now, that doesn't mean going around killing people. Because, listen, if there is an afterlife, I'm going to summarize here. If there is an afterlife, I'm going to go be with my friends. If there is no afterlife, then I get to take a nap. And I'm away from pain. So it sounds like a win-win to me. And then he adds, and also it would be an opportunity to get away from you people. He goes in this list, he's like, and Homer will be there, and Musaeus, and Hesiod, he's like, and Orpheus. Like, if I go to the land of the dead, there's not a heaven-hell situation in Greek thought. If I get to go to the land of the dead and I'm with all these awesome people, it'll be great. It'll be a party. Give me my express ticket. Go ahead and kill me. If that's what you're going to do. Really what you should do is you should give me a stipend, and remember that, the thing we have, the Olympics? You should give me free food at the food court. When he does that, the jury now votes again and sentences Socrates to death. They did give an offer right before this. They said, hey, we'll give you money if you shut up. We'll let you listen, we're giving you an opportunity. We'll drop the charges right now. Here's our plea deal. Listen, you can say, we'll let you go. You can walk today. If you just shut up. You can walk out right now. Just shut up. Leave them alone. Stop asking questions. And stop letting the young people see you do it. And Socrates says this, and this I do want to go over this. This is in 38a. I see where he says, but perhaps someone might say, but Socrates, if you leave us, will you not be able to live quietly without talking? Now, this is the most difficult point on which to convince some of you. If I say that it's impossible for me to keep quiet, because that means disobeying the god, you will not believe me. Remember God told me to do this? Apollo? Yeah, that thing? So if I did that, that would be the blasphemy that you're charging me of. God gave me a mission, and then I wouldn't be doing it. One. On the other hand, if I say that it's the greatest good for a man to discuss virtue, Greek arete, excellence, every day, and those other things about which you hear me conversing and testing myself and others. And then he says this, for the unexamined life is not worth living. You believe me even less, but that line there. The unexamined life is not worth living. What does it mean to live an examined life versus an unexamined life? So he said there, the unexamined life is not worth living, which seems to imply that the examined life is. What does it mean to examine one's? What does that mean?
To live a full life?
I like that. Live a full life. Live abundantly. All right, in a sense of fully orbedness in this. These people are not living a full life in that sense. So I like that. And granted, but that fullness can imply a lot of different notions, for sure, and I'm not decrying you on that. But in the sense of, stop and think. Do these people, have they ever stopped and thought about what they were doing? No. Euthyphro. I'm better than other people. I'm awesome because I know stuff. But you don't, and the reason why you don't know that is because you've never stopped to think about it. And Socrates asked him in that conversation multiple times, like, are you sure? Have you really considered this? Oh yeah, totally. I don't even need to consider it. I don't need to stop and think. Are you doing the right thing? Right now. Whatever it is that you're doing, is it the right thing? Have you ever thought about the way it should be? The examined life is a life where we're getting at that. Do I need to stop and think about this? Have I ever stopped to think? Not that you need to literally stop in motion where you are at the moment. But the unexamined life The person who is unreflective, never gives anything a second thought. That life is not worth living, is what he just said there. Now he's also saying here, that's you. You're going to kill me, but you all have lives that are worthless. Your lives are not worth living. Now do you see why they sentenced him to death? And at the end of the Phaedo, as the death of Socrates, the very end, 117a, in Phaedo, now this story is being recounted, what he did. So people are there, everybody's crying. All right, so I'm skipping Crito. People tried to break him out of jail. He's like, no, I couldn't do that. The right thing to do is for me to face my punishment. Even though the punishment's wrong, I'm not going to do the wrong thing. It's better to suffer injustice than to do injustice. You might have read that recently, because Martin Luther King Jr. makes reference to it in Letter from Birmingham Jail. Specifically Socrates here, being willing to suffer from stupid people doing the wrong thing. That doesn't mean you go do the wrong thing. Okay, so again, Letter from Birmingham Jail makes specific reference to this aspect of Socrates here. You might have read it last week, or be familiar with it. If you're not, you should. Everyone's crying. He's like, can you all stop crying? Did you not hear my apology? This is good. Let him do it. And so what they do is they get on a little vial of, he has to drink hemlock. So remember that painting? He's holding up a cup. He has to drink hemlock poison, which makes your body shut down from the extremities and finally inward. And he goes, cheers! Really, that's what's going on in that painting there. Now he's also doing this, which is actually almost like a Platonic sign. We'll talk about that when we get to Plato. A little for our friends that aren't here. Pours a little of the poison out. He really does this. For the dead. He goes, a little bit there. Whoop. And takes it in one go. No swaying whatsoever. I got this. And then his body slowly shuts down. And the last words he says are this. And I'm just going to say this. He goes, Crito, make sure Asclepius gets a chicken. And then passes out. More formally, we owe a cup to Asclepius. Asclepius is the god of medicine. There's a hint there. Make sure you pay the god of medicine or healing, because I'm in a good place now. It wasn't just completely random last words. Make sure that God gets his sacrifice. Like, make sure God gets his money. He gets paid because he did the right thing for me here. And then he dies. He's dead. So where we are going to be next time, how does especially Plato respond after this? Because remember, these aren't the writings of Socrates. These are the writings of Plato. How are Plato and others going to respond to this? And that's really how we go from here. There's going to be a bunch of Greek philosophy is going to be these little different movements saying, we're doing what Socrates did, but everybody's doing something different. Whether it be Plato, Aristotle, Stoics, Epicureans, Skeptics, Cynics, all going, we're just emulating Socrates. And they all have like a bunch of different competing fan clubs. All with Socrates as their poster child. That's it for today.